I'm just kind of curious. I'm looking to do by hand. I meant to set up a poll. I'm curious to feel that people talk about how the progression went from ChatGPT, the Bard, to Bing and others. So there's Claude's out there. Poe's been really interesting for people to play with it. I haven't spent a lot of time with it. I know my personal journey, I'll start there. I was kind of in ChatGPT like everyone else. Bing and Bard came out and I spent oh my God, probably spent 30, 40 hours comparing those right back in March when they first came out and was underwhelmed. Continue to find myself using ChatGPT and reaching that tool all the time. I think now because of familiarity. Second is because I've really understood this thing as a cognitive partner, and I'm used to doing something quick in 3.5 and then getting it deeper into 4. I'm intrigued by the Claude's notion of handling a lot of PDFs. I've played a little bit that. Poe is interesting because it goes across all of them, but I still find myself really constrained with time and going deep in all the others, and familiarity counts, at least on my fingers. So I keep reaching for the ChatGPT tool, but that's my experience. Anybody else? Has anybody else been compelled to switch to some of the new tools? Or go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. Good morning again. I'm reticent to admit, but I must, that I've been finding Bing quite useful lately. Now on my mobile phone, because I have the app on there, it's quicker to get to that than to ChatGPT. And it seems to be my go-to on the mobile. I actually had an event recently where through ChatGPT using version 4, I didn't get a very good result, and I just went in my browser to Bing and I actually got a much better answer. Also with the flexibility and the fact that you can go into the creative mode and have it do some more ideation in images and those sorts of things. Like I said, I'm reticent to admit it, but I find it's much improved to back like you when I was doing some of those early explorations and had dismissed it. So it's making me think I should carve out the time to go back and revisit some of these other ones as well.
That's great, Adam. And when you're in front of your desktop, what do you reach for then?
Oh, definitely ChatGPT, because of the plugins and the code interpreter and the custom instruction. It just has too much still on offer there.
I was getting ready for this, and I found my old spreadsheet or table comparing Bing and Chat with the use cases back in March, and I'm anxious to kind of go back and here's what Bard was saying, or Bing was saying back in March versus what Bing's saying right now, kind of a comparison with Bing. Thank you, Adam. RJ, go ahead.
So this is just a carry on from last week where I brought up Chat PDF and Chat with PDF, and Rosemary had so kindly pointed out that Claude 2 is really seems better. So I had happened to have done a comparison of Chat with PDF and Chat PDF and also Bing. And so I figured, okay, let me compare Claude's reply to the same exact PDF file, and also same exact questions entered in the same exact order. And I was very surprised. Claude 2 was actually much more insightful in terms of how it answered the questions. And the impression that I got was that the other two apps were doing either not answering the questions properly at all, or in some cases, or they were basically grandizing the answer as if it was trying to tell me more than really it should have been. It was like trying to say, oh yes, it was like sort of like a used car salesman saying, oh yeah, that paper was great. It did all of these things, but really it didn't. And Claude was able to pick out, no, it didn't really do all of those things. For a specific question, it only did this, and it made some recommendations in other areas, but so it was overall, Claude seemed to be much more good at the subtle interpretation of the document, and it also gave a very good outline, which the other ones didn't do. So I would resonate with Rosemary in that Claude 2 seems to me much better at answering questions about complicated PDFs.
Thank you, RJ. But when you go and reach for a tool, do you reach for Claude now? What's your go-to?
Well, I'm starting to now. It's now on my list, because it seems to be so much better at specifically for PDF documents, because that's one of my key things I want to use in my workflow. An AI for is to analyze complicated documents so that I can quickly get answers about it, either see a really good outline of it or see some really good summarizations and bullet points. That's something that's in my everyday workflow. So that could save me a lot of time if Claude ends up being a very reliable resource for that. So I would want to switch to that.
Thanks.
Would you feel comfortable feeding Claude proprietary information?
Well, of course, you wouldn't want to do that, but another alternative approach would be needed for something like that.
Can you implement Claude locally? Or no, it's not open source. So.
That I don't know. I don't know about that.
Go ahead, Rosemary. Thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to ask RJ. So I did this webinar last weekend. A lot of people talked about hallucinations. And so I was wondering what you found, what your experience was with Claude 2 and all these PDFs, because I'm doing the same thing with these. Did you find that there were more or less hallucinations, or could you tell? I mean, you'd have to read all the PDFs, right? Which is really a hard thing to do. But what's your sense of level of hallucination with Claude?
Well, you have to go over the PDF with a fine-tooth comb and really, really read every line, and then compare it to the what either Claude is saying or ChatPDF is saying. So it's a really difficult test to do. But I mean, basically, if you want to see some comparisons, I can share a screen right now that shows it to you. I don't know whether can I share a screen, Paul?
Go ahead, RJ, please.
Okay, so let me share this document. I'll show you'll be able to see them side by side if you guys are that interested. Right, I'm trying to share it. Let's see what it's doing here. Okay, so basically what you see here is, all right.
RJ, we don't see.
I gave Claude a very, well, it may take a little while because I have a very slow connection. So you should see it around now.
We do now. Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Yes,
Okay. So basically, yeah. So basically I shared, let me see if I can go over here. Where's the document? Well, sorry, I thought I had the document here. Oh yeah, the document's over here. All right, so basically I shared this document here, which was on BD Tech Talks, and it was an article that they wrote, somebody wrote promoting a book, and it's called Generative Artificial Intelligence, More Than You Asked For. So it was talking about some really subtle problems with generative AI that it can cause. And so I figured, all right, let me ask these different AI bots about that. And so first thing I did was I asked it, what are the key points in the PDF? And in general, Claude was much better at pointing out things. But what really caught me was when I asked it for specific things, subtle things, the other ones tended to make up responses. So for instance, if I go down here and I talk about, and I look into what recommendations were being made, so basically Claude was very good. It realized, no, there wasn't any recommendations specifically in the article, whereas the other ones were saying, oh yeah, there's all kinds of recommendations. Well, basically those models, ChatPDF was being overly inventive. It was like jumping beyond what the text was saying and sort of saying and making assumptions that really it shouldn't have been making. So Claude was very good. It realized, no, there wasn't any real recommendations in the article. They brought up issues, but they didn't bring up any recommendations. And the whole purpose of the article was to promote the book. So that's sort of like a a classic example of, I think, where you have to be careful with using ChatPDF or ChatGPT or any other bot, because they tend to be designed in such a way to basically come up with good content, text, and it doesn't necessarily reflect what you want to get if you're asking for a very specific question to be answered. So that's basically what I would say overall about what to be careful about.
Wonderful. Thank you, RJ. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Um,
I'll stop now.
Thank you. Others want to share, or does anyone move to Bing 100%? I may have mentioned this last week. We were doing some training for a company, and we've got a use case we walked through of it's cross-functional thing. It's a fictional company that's making coffee cups for left-handed people. So we go through research and the taglines, and it's kind of fun, and people really seem to resonate with it. And a company saw me give it and asked me to give it to their company. And 2 days before we gave it, the person who was sponsoring us called us up and said, Paul, please mention Bing AI, because we're going to standardize on Bing, because we don't want employees asking for reimbursement for the $20 a month for ChatGPT. So the kind of Bing enterprise standard Microsoft thing was starting to at least work in that company from an RJ, from a IT standpoint.
Just another thing about Bing Enterprise I see in the market is it's giving companies the assurance that people aren't going to be violating the third-party privacy rules. It gives them a little more control around the conversation their users are having.
Yeah, no, I think it's and there's a little fear in there as well that you can sprinkle to the IT department and control, and here's a control button and get all those employees in line, and it's just it's manna from heaven for some folks. Go ahead, Tim. I see you have your hand up.
Yep, I've been doing some experimenting this week. I wanted to see if I pretended I really didn't know anything about programming, if I chose Claude 2 and ChatGPT code interpreter because they're the most popular ones. I haven't tried Bing or the others. So it was interesting. It was I can give the counterpoint to the Claude thing that ChatGPT was clearly superior here, in that it was better at not only generating better code, but it also understood more clearly that I was pretending to be completely non-technical. So it didn't, I couldn't convince Claude not to send me snippets of code that needed to be edited into a development environment. And I said, I don't know how to do that. I'm not a programmer. And then it would say, oh, I'm sorry. It would regenerate all the code and do this and that and the other thing. But it also just never got things working ultimately. And I eventually got things working with ChatGPT. But in both cases, the interesting thing was a non-programmer couldn't have done this. I really ultimately had to give them a little coaching as a programmer. But ChatGPT both were good in that, because I did it in JavaScript. I wanted to see how good they were without Python. So anyway, it's a little geeky. I can go into more detail if people are interested. But I think this is close. And I think this is I think this is much more important than helping programmers, is helping non-programmers. Because if people like you, Paul, and others who don't have programming backgrounds, or at least sophisticated programming backgrounds, can suddenly generate even prototypes, that to me is a game changer, total game changer. So I was interested to see where it was, and my conclusion is it's close but no cigar right now. So I think it'll get there, but it still needs some work. I have used Bing and Bard a little bit, not enough to draw a lot of conclusions. My initial experiences with Bard were awful. I'd type things into GPT 3.5 and Bard was clueless, completely clueless and hopeless. Bing, I found okay, but not great. Bing was great for image generation. So Bing sort of has been my go-to if I need to deal with images. Dolly's pretty good, but Bing I found to be the best. It's free, it's easy once you get in there, and there's still lots of problems. I asked it to generate Hermes, and it couldn't do it. Didn't know who Hermes was, even though it did know who Hermes was. So then I tried God with wings on its feet. Nothing. I mean, it was terrible. So there's still lots and lots of issues, but ChatGPT, it still ends up being the winner for me most of the time. So that's still at this point my go-to.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Go ahead, Manny. Thanks for raising your hand.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Can you hear me okay?
And yes.
Quick question. I think you said this earlier. Do we have a list that shows the differences, especially the technical features or feature functions between Bing and ChatGPT?
Oh.
I'd love to see what's available on one versus the other.
I'll show you my working list that's very incomplete. This was.
You got your mouse here.
What's that? Yeah, so this was a list I started pulling together a couple months ago, and I wanted to get this weekend and I haven't. So one activity we could do today is at least start filling this out as a group. There's interest in that. But the specific answer to your question, I have not seen a comprehensive. Has anyone else seen a comprehensive comparison? I know, Rosemary, you did a really good one last week on the PDF for a couple different versions, but I have not seen it particularly with Poe and Claude versus ChatGPT. Have others?
The only one I've seen is very old.
Yeah.
Like a few months old.
I mean, we can go through. I mean, my understanding is to use Bing, you still have to use Microsoft Edge. Is that still factually true? No, they can.
No, it's not true. No.
I asked that and they said no.
Okay, have you tried it on? You confirmed that, Steve?
No, I haven't.
Yes.
I haven't confirmed it.
You can use a Chrome plugin and you don't have to have the Edge browser. The Chrome extension
To use Bing AI.
to use Bing Chat without downloading the Edge browser.
And then the other one is, so what's the right term? Is it Bing AI chat? Is it Bing chat? Is it enterprise AI? Do we have any Microsoft, or does anyone know the answer for that?
Well, the tool is just called Bing. And then there's Bing Enterprise, which is the one that we were discussing earlier being implemented into corporate.
Well, when I type in Bing, I get the search, Adam. So it's just a part of the Bing search?
I see what you're saying.
They're listing a Bing chat is what they're showing me when I start looking for Bing.
Oh.
And they do force me into Microsoft Edge. I changed my answer.
Yeah, they make you use, well, you probably can figure a way around it, but they really strongly get you towards Microsoft Edge, and then they call it the new Bing, but it is just Bing, and you just treat it like a search engine.
What other,
Yeah, so Paul,
Yeah.
it's Microsoft, so nobody inside Microsoft also knows what's the right word. It's like one of those Microsoft SQL Server, Edition Server, Enterprise.
well, one reason I raised it, because we were dealing with one company and the person I was there was saying, oh no, I already use ChatGPT. I use Microsoft version. And I said, what are you using? And they said, I use Bing. And what they were using was Bing search, thinking that was the large language model equivalent over there. So it is, at least was confusing in that. David, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Sorry for the egotistical chest thumping here, but since someone asked this morning from the UK, you all know the term Y2K. So in the context of what's the word, right, Paul?
Yes.
Everybody here, I assume, is old enough to remember Y2K. Most
Too
people
much.
would assume it was a hoax. My claim to fame is I coined the term.
Oh,
Absentmindedly, about 11 o'clock at night. And the reason that no one ever, I don't think anybody in an interview who has interviewed me ever believes it. It was purely lazy. Why type non-characters, YEAR space 2000, when 3 will do? Purely lazy.
yeah.
And so the terminology is you know, the marketing people at those firms are peddling as fast as they can to make up some new gobbledygook term. That's my wisdom for the night.
Well, thank you, David. And that was all the rage. It was 94, 95 for those last 4 or 5 years for folks who remember. Any other comments, or we can go to the grid if that makes sense? We can start collective working on that. So great. So let me switch over here. Maybe we can spend like just 10 minutes with this, and then we can go to Claude is from, and for me, Claude and GPT is the most interesting battle. So I got Microsoft's behind the private company OpenAI, and you've got Google behind Anthropic, which is behind the Claude. OpenAI's raised what, 2 billion, 1 billion, 4 billion. Claude's raised $1 billion. So at least this to me seems like where Microsoft and Google, the intergalactic battle, that they're going to be pushing these guys furthest on the edge because there's at least amount of stock market risk for something going wrong, is my working theory. How about, does anybody know what the Claude training set, does it stop at a certain point? I actually don't know these. For the training set? Does anybody know if it has an API?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Languages, multiple languages?
not as strong as ChatGPT, but it does.
Okay. What's its most notable feature? The 70,000 word?
Yeah, 100,000. Oh, yeah, 100K tokens.
And Alden, have you seen that? Has people tested that, or how comfortable? Is that a marketing term, or people tested that?
I think people have tested it. I haven't. They're quite restrictive with the API.
Yeah.
So it's not as open as OpenAI.
Rosemary, were you the one telling me that did someone tell me that they were putting 5 and 6 PDFs at a time into Claude?
Yes, you can put 5 into, up to 5 in PDFs into Claude. And there's also a size limit, but I could put up 5 with no restrictions, unless it was a huge PDF that had all kinds of images in.
And Rosemary, large meaning 100-page PDF. I could put 5 100-page PDFs in there from your experience.
81 pages with 100 images in it.
And it is, from what you've seen so far, it'll interpret all the text within a PDF. It won't interpret text within an image in PDF. Is that a factual statement?
I don't know, but I will see if I can test it right now.
Yeah, I've had 3 or 4 people ask me if they have, if Code Interpreter can interpret graphs within PDF, and I had not heard that, and kind of be surprised if it could, but I continue to be.
Paul.
Yeah, go
Paul,
ahead.
this is yeah, so I did some pretty extensive testing this weekend on Claude for size. So the impetus was pretty much Rosemary's suggestion, how much success she's had with it. And the first, I did it on 2 documents, very, very different. One of them was unstructured data, basically a set of customer emails. It was 33 emails, 14 pages of essentially 1 to 2 line text. And it just did an amazing job on it. Let me first say I tried it in 3.5. What 3.5 seems to do is it'll let you fill up the entire context window, but if it has no token context left, it basically will give you garbage at the end. What 4.0 seems to do is allocate a portion of the context window for output. So when I fed that exact same document into 4.0, it basically says too large. when I put it into Claude and asked some questions, it just did a very beautiful job. First at a summary level, and then gave me highlights of individual customers that were very favorable to this particular company, and then ones that were unfavorable. So you can easily see the use. The first one going to marketing department, the second one going to the operations, management team to go fix it. So that was one test. The other one was the many people on this webinar probably received McKinsey reports. So I took the most recent future of generative AI in the workplace that just came out last week. It's a 60-page PDF. Now, I didn't know its size until I tried loading it into Claude. It turns out it was 13 meg. So Claude, of course, said it was too large. So then I took the document and I threw it into Adobe Acrobat. And I have all the pictures and stuff here, so I'll just describe it for you to the extent anyone's interested. I'd be happy to show you the results. Breaking it into an 8 megabyte file and a 5 megabyte file. It took about 20 to 30 minutes to go through properly and have it give me results on the 8 megabyte file. First, it basically said it stopped and didn't operate. Then it would actually start generate a response and then stop and disappear. Finally, it just locked me out of the system, basically as if I was a bad dude, that sort of thing. Eventually, it actually gave me results, but that was about 20 minutes. The 5 megabyte file, again, I did these separate. It couldn't do it as two separate files that aggregated greater than 10 megs. So that didn't work. It didn't work independently as a 13 meg file, and it didn't work as an 8+5 file. So then what I was just describing is doing separately is 8+5. The 5 worked beautifully, fast first time through. So what I am likely to do, given roughly an hour for that McKinsey report, is take any document. And again, these aren't text documents. There's a lot. If you're familiar with McKinsey reports, there's lots of diagrams and graphs and charts and that sort of thing. And break it into files of 5 megs and smaller, and do them independently, not as a single dialogue. And essentially what it is ask the same questions of each of the two different ones. So that was my experience with it. Overall, what I would say is this: nothing compares right now, both my own experience and from the independent evaluators of 4.0 versus even Claude 2. Some recent tests came out on that, but it's catching up, Claude 2. And I don't know whether we're really on the free side using Claude 2 or Claude 1, but it's pretty good for the documents I use. And the whole discussion earlier, just one final comment, all the plugins are limited to either 2K or 4K. So if you're throwing in a document that's greater than 4K of tokens worth, you're really not comparing apples and apples. Claude's going to win that 100% of the time because of its ability to take in a large document. So just recognize there are no plugins that can handle anything greater than 4K, and most of them are going to be allocated 2K tokens.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. Let's open we'll go to open mic here in a minute. Any other comments or has anyone tried the Facebook open source model by chance? So Lambda, you can, I did have one engineer who's got it on his laptop. It's a little slow, but it does work. I don't know if anyone's, I've been looking for a comparison. It's probably out there. I just haven't found it, of how close Facebook's open source with a commercial license is getting to ChatGPT, because, I think for, look at you, Rosemary, for all those very conservative companies that don't want to do anything with ChatGPT, if I can put an open source thing behind my firewall or within my secure Amazon or hosting thing here that's got at least 80% of it, that's going to at least satisfy some. Do you have a point of view on that, or am I misreading?
Yeah, no, you read it completely right. And the initial reports are that it's pretty close to ChatGPT on some benchmarks, but nobody knows what those benchmarks are. But right now, if somebody wants a completely private AI, right, with your own vector database, your own LLM, then this Llama 2 model from Facebook that might be the way to go.
Yeah. That,
Like,
that, and all to me, just this is stunning though. I mean, we're in January or December just learning about ChatGPT, and now 6 months later, we're saying you can have something that's 80% as good for free, stick it behind your firewall, control everything with your data in 6 months.
it's absolutely stunning. It's absolutely stunning, right? And that's why I think the game right now is going to the next level of AI, to the point where how good AI is at reasoning rather than just like, completions and generating text. So I think that's where like ChatGPT is going to go next. And that's where their lead is also. Like if you look at GPT-4's reasoning, it is absolutely fabulous compared to all these other models.
Right, correct. And there's a great Microsoft research report on the ChatGPT-4 quantifying the reasoning. People haven't seen it. It's about 152-page report, but they go through quantitatively 6 dimensions that a lot of the scientists have said are elements of AGI. Go ahead, Paul Schofield. We'll go to you and then Tim.
Yeah, I'm interested in what's going to eventually tip the scales because, Paul, as you remember, when we did the first e-commerce, we worked really hard. We had the smartest people, the most good-looking people, the most honest people. We had everything. And then people, my relatives kept bringing me this stuff from AOL saying, hey, I got the CD in the mail. I'm going to sign up. They'd sign up from AOL before I could show them how they would get to the internet for free. And AOL made a lot of money doing something really stupid, just sending CDs over the mail. So we got to account for chaos in this thing.
Well, and Paul, what I took away from that is that easy on-ramp counts, and early market,
Yes.
It will trump anything else in the back. And, that's why I think Microsoft Bing and certainly Google Bard with 4.9 billion people using search, they've got an on-ramp that's pretty close to a lot of people.
You say easy on ramp and early adoption.
Yes. Yeah. Thank
Cool.
you.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Tim. You're mute, Tim.
I got to get off mute. Okay. So I would say a couple of things. One is I do know I have a couple of good friends at very large corporations, like Fortune 50 plus. Okay. And they're using Microsoft. The only one I've heard so far. And so they're getting effectively OpenAI, but they're getting it. Microsoft is offering effectively I don't know the details. So again, I'm just hand waving here, but they're offering a secure way, data private way for these very, very, very large firms to make use of this without disclosing data, but without also making a complete homegrown installation. So it's a hybrid model as I understand it. Again, I can't swear to it because I know the details. I've just had a couple of quick conversations, but I'm interested in learning more about this. But that is happening, and with some, as I said, seriously large corporations. So that's the way they're kind of getting control, enabling access to very large numbers of employees with security and data privacy. I think the chaos is bound to continue. My old friend Paul Saffo had a great saying. He said 20 years to an overnight sensation, because there's all this kind of bumbling around and fumbling, and a lot of work gets done. And these exponential things, when you go from 2 to 4 to 8, nobody notices. But when you go from 2 million to 4 million to 8 million, people notice. And the difference here that I see, because people don't even remember search engines, right? We're old enough. Remember Alta Vista? Yeah. Totally dominant in the search engine space. And then Google came along, swept them under the rug in a couple of months, literally. But that was a different technology. So that's also possible. Like you sent the link around about liquid neural nets. I'm not enough of a mathematician to understand, but that's a game changer if that works. So there's still potentially other shoes to drop. It's really, really early days. But the ChatGPT stuff at the end of the day is commodity. Neural networks have been around. As he said, it's really just who can afford 20,000 GPUs for a couple of months. It's expensive, but I suspect the top competitors will be neck and neck. Already they are really, and they'll get more and more commoditized, if you will, in the basic function very quickly because there's nothing different about the underlying technology at the end of the day.
Thank you. Tim, back on Microsoft, I heard the same thing. The two things I've noticed in Microsoft, unlike, feels like the Microsoft of old, they are very customer centric. So if you want open source, you want closed source, we'll give it to you. And I'm assuming for that application, I'm trying to get verification. The only way to really satisfy Fortune 50 is that's got to be behind their firewall. So I suspect that Microsoft has taken a version of their ChatGPT or OpenAI and putting it behind the firewall so they can tell a Wells Fargo or whatnot. Wells Fargo data will never be outside your, whatever you control the perimeter is.
Well, I don't know how far you want to go down to the weeds. That's not necessarily the case. Alden has a lot more experience, certainly, than me, but they could be following, you know, the kind of the Alden's approach, which is, okay, we'll work with you and take all your important data and put it into a vector database that's behind your firewall. We'll give you maybe your own instance running in Microsoft, but it's a tenanted instance, it's yours. So in a sense, it's kind of behind the firewall, but it's also still run and owned by Microsoft, so they can integrate the latest GPT changes. There's lots of things they can do that would probably make it more convenient. Or they may be able, they may be able to even use the regular GPT if they use a vector database within the corporation and keep that behind the firewall. So there are a few different approaches that could work. And as I said, I just don't know the details.
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead.
Right,
Yeah,
please.
so Paul, there are three elements here. The first one is the public one, which you all are familiar with, you know, ChatGPT, custom GPT, guys like that. The second one is the on-premise, so the stuff that is happening inside your building and your secure data center and all that. And where Microsoft comes into the picture is the virtual private cloud, right? This is a complete, like, siloed cloud that Microsoft runs for you, right? So a lot of companies, they are fine with something like that. And what they are introducing is ChatGPT and services like that that stay within your cloud. No data moves outside your private cloud, right? Which is very important for enterprises.
So, Alden, keep me honest here. So the use case I have is that I, as a large company, want to make sure whatever goes into the prompt is not Boy Scout trust me, that it goes into a log over at OpenAI and say, oh my God, see the contract, we don't trust it. I don't want anyone over there even seeing the logs. But
yeah,
is there a way to get that done without having it within my virtual private network?
If it is ChatGPT, then you'll have to use the Microsoft version, which is the Azure OpenAI.
Okay.
In the Azure OpenAI, they run the ChatGPT in your virtual cloud, in your tenant.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So you don't have to take Sam Altman's or OpenAI's word for it. Yeah. Microsoft will stand behind it. And if you see that your data leaked, then you become richer than Bill Gates by suing Microsoft.
And so, and I'll wrap up and said differently, Alden, is that in that case you just went through, a Microsoft employee engineer can never see the log files of what goes into the prompt for a.
Correct. Yeah. And what they just announced is something called no eyes, which means that even Microsoft engineers cannot see what's inside your tenant.
Yeah. Which would
so
be
that is something that only Microsoft is offering, the no eyes system.
Which would be good if I'm a very large company. I really want to use this for PII information, for stock trading information, from really proprietary information that has huge business value.
Yeah. You know? And so they just came out with it about a couple of weeks ago, the no eyes thing.
Yeah, that's great. Tim, do you still have a contribution? You have hands up?
No, I think I just didn't lower it. I can lower it.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Well, let's open it up. Any other questions, contributions, suggestions, complaints? Go ahead, Mike. Then we'll go to Steve. Mike, you're on mute.
The things like no eyes, are they still free or do they cost something?
A lot.
As expected.
If you want to say hello to Microsoft,
there's a large transaction involved with a lot of zeros on the end. Yep.
Yeah. It costs 50,000 to say hello. Then the conversation starts.
Right, and the big companies are using it.
Uh,
That's what they
oh,
prefer.
Yeah, go ahead. We just got a few minutes. Go ahead, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen, you're on mute.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Cool. So my son actually created an online coding platform. This is before all this stuff happened. I said, well, everybody's putting in ChatGPT, so we just went ahead. So he went ahead and added that in, and seems to work pretty well. You know, you can see how good the coding is. And we're just using ChatGPT, but obviously that costs us money, and our accounts are free. This is a free service that we put up there, and people can use. So one of the next thing that we wanted to do was to use Llama 2. So that's kind of the in progress. But obviously we need to know how much resources it's going to take and things like that. So if anybody has any insight into it, please let me know. But he's going to go off and do some homework and see if we can just swap out ChatGPT with Llama 2 and see if it's just as good in terms of code.
That'd be great. So please report back if you can, or whatever you can learn. That's really an important journey you guys are going on, or he's going on.
And if you guys want, check out the website, I put the link on there. Like I said, it's free. And, we do limit you a little bit on the ChatGPT because we don't want to break our bank, but you're definitely free to kind of explore and send us, bugs or whatever. We'll be fine.
Well, good. Well, thank you, everyone. Another really good discussion, and have a good week, and keep spreading the word. Take care.